everybody. My name is AJ Rice. I'm the founder of a startup called Privo Mobile. We like to call ourselves a dumb phone for modern times. So smartphones are not suitable for young children, and mostly because they have access to the whole internet and everything that comes with it. You can see some of the things on the internet here. And as kids are spending more time on screens, we're seeing an increase in rates of childhood depression, anxiety, loneliness, which were pretty stable from around 2000 till 2012. And right around 2012, started to jump up considerably. And we've seen about a doubling in the rate of children with a major depressive episode in the last 12 months. From 2012 to 2019, and that's before we get into all the effects of COVID and more screen time, school closures. So much so that the US Surgeon General recently said we have a teen mental health crisis and that social media is not suitable for children prior to the age of 13. So, where do I click? Let's see. And click it down now. Go up. All right.
Oh, you got it.
All right. Okay. So about 3.5 million kids get their first cell phone every year. They're at an average age of about 10 and a half. So by age 11, the majority of American kids already have a smartphone. Okay. So what a lot of parents are resorting to now is parental smartphones with parental control apps. So that's where they take an iPhone, for example, and they set controls for the apps that their child can access on their phone. And there's a few problems with this. One is that the setup process is really complicated, particularly for people who don't have a technology background. So for a lot of people, they plan on setting up all these parental controls, but never quite get around to it. And they may miss something in the process, and their kid may access something they're not supposed to. The much bigger problem is that even when the parents set up everything perfectly, these parental control apps simply don't work. And kids are quite clever at circumventing the parental controls and figuring out ways around it. So just a couple examples how kids get around parental controls on Apple, for instance. So one, you might set a restriction on the time of day when your kids can access their phone, but then kids change the time zone and access it whenever they want. Also, if you set restrictions on a specific app, they may delete and reinstall the app and it removes the restrictions. And finally, if all else fails, they can just restore to factory settings on the phone, do a hard reset, and all the restrictions go away and they access whatever they want. And kids are quite clever at figuring these things out, but they also socialize those findings with one another and share them. So the alternative solution is the dumb phones of yesteryear, of 15 years ago, and they appropriately restrict functionality, but they have very old, clunky user experiences, especially for texting. But as clunky as these phones are, they are seeing an increase in adoption among kids, with parents searching for a solution to keep in touch with their kids without giving them access to the internet. So the better solution that we're building at Privo Mobile is what we call a dumb phone for modern times. It's a phone that combines the limited functionality of a dumb phone with the modern user experience of a smartphone. So what does it do? No social media, no games, no internet browser, no app store. It's literally just call, text, camera, alarm clock, music, that's it. There's no external app loading, there's no extra features. If you want to do something else, too bad. It does what it does, that's it. It works right away and you hand it to your kid and it's ready to go. So in addition, we have a modern user experience and a functional texting interface with a QWERTY touch-based keyboard and threaded messages that you're used to in your smartphone. So what's our business model? So we sell phones directly to customers, but we don't make the hardware, we just make the software. So we build a proprietary operating system, which is based on Android, and we take existing low-end Android phones and resell those directly to consumers. So that enables us to produce in really small quantities at affordable prices without spending 10 or 20 million in initial investment to get our phones to market. We also offer optional cellular plans. So you can either get a cellular plan from us, or you can pick your choice of carrier, plug in a SIM card into the phone. And either way, the phone works just like a regular phone. So how can you in the community help? So we need three primary things. We're in the process of, or in a month or so, opening up our seed round. So we're looking for investors, early stage venture capitalists, especially, but happy to meet other investors, whether they be angels or later stage VCs, just to network. We also need employees. We're not hiring right now, but in the next 3 months or so, are looking to add both in software development and marketing specifically. On the software development side, we're looking for Android framework engineers, if that means anything to you. And on the marketing, looking for the first couple hires to really build our marketing department from the ground up. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, we're looking for customers. So people who are going to buy our devices. So we're not available for sale yet, but we are planning on launching pre-orders in about a couple months. And the product will be available this fall and late summer if you're interested in participating in our beta. So if you're interested in learning more or signing up for our waiting list, you can go to privomobile.com, which I have here on the screen. You're also welcome to contact me. I have my contact info. My email, if you can't see it, is aj@privomobile.com. As a startup founder, I'm obliged to have first name at company name as my email. And with that, I will open it up to questions. Thank you. Yes.
So I've seen multiple offerings for
yes.
What makes yours?
Sure. So I'd say there's two primary categories of competitors we have in the modern dumb phone alternative space. And one is, for those specifically focused on kids, they're creating some version of parental controls, whether it's a device that's controlled from some third-party application or device, and it runs into a lot of the same problems that you see on iPhone and Android as well, where the external controls don't work and they're complicated to set up. To your question more directly, there's a number of modern dumb phone alternatives, but a lot of them haven't solved the fundamental problem to me of dumb phones, which is that the texting experience is unusable. I'm sure a lot of you remember T9 texting, where you had to press the 1 3 times to get the letter C. And a lot of these modern dumb phones, like the Light phone, for instance, which you may be aware of, really have created, in some instances, an even worse texting experience that is very difficult to use. So creating a product that's very easy to use, and if you're going to do 5 things, it's not enough to have it look kind of cool. Those things have to actually work and be easy to use, and your phone has to be good at doing them. So that's where we think we differentiate from some of the other solutions in the market. Yes.
From having nieces and nephews, I know part of the thing that the parents like is tracking their Is that honest?
It is not, and there's a few reasons for that, and it's a question we get a lot. One, and something to think about is if you're giving your kid a phone, in theory, that at least should give you less reason to track their location. But another reason is that when you're tracking the location of your child, you're also creating a lot of privacy and cybersecurity issues by allowing the location to be accessed from a third-party device. And when you allow parents to track the location, which may be good, you're also potentially allowing companies or potentially individuals that you don't want to have access to that location to get access to that location more easily. So, it's a balancing act, and like many things in product, how do you manage the trade-offs of, providing one benefit with also, avoiding the downsides of that. And that's why, at least at this time, we've opted not to provide location tracking on the phone. Although I would say the child has the option to send their location, but it has to be initiated from the device. So it's not passive tracking, but they can, send the current location via text message to whomever they like.
So what's the target age group?
Sure. So it varies by kid and by family. The target age range is roughly from ages 8 to 13, which is a big range. In the US, the average kid gets a smartphone around 10 and a half. So we're right around that point, typically with parents who are more conservative in terms of giving their kid access to electronics, but still around that same age range, considering us as an alternative to a smartphone. I would also say, well, these phones are designed for kids. They also make great phones for certain adults, myself included, which was the initial inspiration for this idea, who simply want to spend less time on their phone or are particularly concerned about privacy and cybersecurity. Another area we see a lot of interest from is from senior citizens and elderly population who might have a smartphone, but only do 2 things on it anyway, and to just kind of declutter the interface and create something that's easier to use to do a couple other things and doesn't have everything else. But for the kids, it is, somewhere generally in that 8 to 13 range. So about 20% of kids who are 8 have smartphones, and by 13, that's close to 80+%. So you have about 2/3 of people in the US are getting a smartphone in that range. So that's roughly the range that we are and that we see interest. Yes.
I'm finding myself curious about customer acquisition.
Sure.
Where do you find these parents? What are their buying habits?
Yeah. Sure. So in terms of our customer acquisition strategy, it's kind of 3 phases that are sequential and starting with things that don't scale. So at the beginning, first 100 customers, it's literally me selling one at a time. Talking to people. Yes, I will talk to you for 5 hours to sell you one $200 phone, which is not a scalable strategy. But for acquiring initial customers, it does make sense, and that's kind of where we're at right now. Phase 2, which we're entering pretty soon, and in the next few months, is around things that scale a little bit. Customers 100 to 1,000 or a couple thousand, but maybe aren't the most scalable. So, for instance, this is a business that lends itself pretty well to earned media because it's just a thing that a lot of people are interested in talking about. Also working with like micro influencers and mommy bloggers, people who have specific interest in these issues. There's a number of nonprofits that are focused on kids and technology use. So how we can partner with them to reach their audiences as well. So those are things that can get incremental growth, but aren't the long-term customer acquisition strategy. And then finally, phase 3, which is probably not until next year, is more around traditional advertising means, and that's going to be more heavy experimentation, trying a lot of things, seeing what works. Expanding in phase 2, I should have mentioned the affiliate model, where we have people who are influencers who are promoting our brand. But in phase 3, just trying a bunch of different things, getting more analytical and systematic about our customer acquisition, but then also expanding sales channels. So it's kind of a chicken and egg problem where we'd like to sell through all kinds of different channels because that will help us be successful. But in order to sell through more channels, we need to be successful first. So, kind of creating the initial proof of market and proof of traction and, having a product that's working out in the wild. And then we can, leverage that success to get more sales channels, whether they be, telco providers or, particular retail channels or things like that. But for the short term, we're direct to consumer and me selling one at a time. And, maybe even you could call this presenting to at events like these. But thinking over the long term how that evolves and we do things that are more scalable. Yes.
I'm curious, what is preventing a large?
Sure. So to your point, if Apple created a $200 dumb phone, or sorry, $199, that did essentially the same thing as ours, we'd be out of business tomorrow. The point is that they're not going to, and the primary reason that Apple and Google, who are really own on the software side the smartphone space, aren't going to compete with us is because it undercuts their existing business model. So as much as we can talk about some of the dumb phone alternatives and kid-focused alternatives that are in the market today, in the US, the dominant market player and our primary competitor is Apple, and it's Apple by a mile. And they own this market already with their existing solution and don't really have a desire to undercut themselves with a cheaper product, one which doesn't add their value-added services that they make incremental revenue on, and doesn't connect to their broader smartphone ecosystem. So thinking about it in that way, it's not that they couldn't, it's that they don't want to as the primary driver. That we're kind of in the perfect market size where we're big enough to be interesting and venture scale, but small enough that Apple and Google are not gonna undercut their existing business to more aggressively target this market, at least not for a while.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Ida. It was so